Thanks so much for coming on Mod TV, Caitlin. So our Friday show is where we talk about connection. And the reason we've asked you to join us today is because you've been completing your honours thesis at UniSA, and we want to know more about your research. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did your psychology studies and time gaming spark your interest in your honours thesis topic?
Yeah, so I guess I've always kind of been interested in human behaviour, which led me into studying psychology in the first place. I guess through my first few years at uni, I didn't really know where I wanted to take my psychology degree. I just wanted to learn as much as I could, seek out as many opportunities as possible. So that led to some research assistant work on a project involving creativity. So that kind of piqued my interest in the creativity field a little bit. So I did want to combine a few of my sort of areas of interest when I started to formulate ideas for my honours thesis. I've always been interested in malevolent behaviour, which is sort of any behaviour taken in order to intentionally inflict or cause harm to another person. As you sort of mentioned, I do like to listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. I watch a lot of documentaries on true crime. So I thought it would be cool to explore some aspect of criminal behaviour. So that's sort of why I've chosen to focus on malevolent creativity, which is the generation of novel and effective ideas to intentionally cause harm. So you've got the creativity component, which is the generation of ideas, and the malevolent component, which is that intent to cause harm. So the last kind of area of interest I've incorporated in my research is video gaming. So, I mean, I was born in the 90s. Video games have always kind of been there while I was growing up. They've always been a constant. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life really where I wasn't actively playing something. But I'd never really given the potential effects of video games much thought until I started my psychology degree. Like I'd always kind of heard in the media and concerned parents talking about violent games and the potential effect of violent games. But other than that, I didn't really know much about the sort of effect that video game play might have on us. So then when I started reflecting back on my own time spent gaming and the games I did play, I kind of realised there was quite a big creativity element to them. So you've got your sandbox games like Minecraft, where you're constantly building and designing, and life simulation games are often the same. So there is some evidence that video games can sort of enhance creativity or teach creativity skills. So I did want to look into whether video games have the potential to perhaps enhance malevolent creativity in particular, and if so, what those games might look like.
Was there, because I'm a massive gamer as well, I'm probably more into the RPG type of thing, which is massive creativity. It's like these open world, existences. Is there a particular game that you were like, yes, this is definitely a crossover between that creativity and that malevolent kind of behavior?
Yeah, I mean, not so much a particular game, but if you think about most video game genres, a lot of them you kind of have to think creatively to get to the objective or of the game. So if you think of a lot of like first-person shooters, you might not at first think that there's much creativity involved, but you actually do need those skills to kind of think of a way to get through and to get to your objective. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Now, can you tell us a bit more about what your research is about in particular and what it involves?
So in a nutshell, I'm looking at the effect that video gameplay has on the relationship between personality and malevolent creativity. So we do know that certain personality traits might have a positive relationship with malevolent creativity, meaning that people who do possess those traits might be more malevolently creative. So we've got traits like psychopathy, which is a really sort of antisocial behaviour trait, and Machiavellianism. People who are sort of high on Machiavellianism are quite manipulative and deceitful. So psychopathy and Machiavellianism make up what we call the dark triad, along with narcissism. So we've got the three traits. So we call them the dark triad because essentially they're three traits that have strong malevolent qualities within them. So there's that intent to cause harm again. So I'm sort of collecting data on whether people who do score highly on the dark triad also show higher levels of malevolent creativity. So then on top of that, I'm taking the type of video game behaviour engaged in into account to see whether that has any effect. So for the purpose of my study, I'm looking at sort of aggressive game behaviour, which is that classic shooting, causing harm or injury to other players or objects. Creative behaviour, which is that sort of design aspect in a lot of games. Helping behaviour, which is a lot of collaborative gameplay. And winning behaviour, which is sort of about progressing the storyline. So I'm sort of looking at the type of gameplay that is sort of engaged in a lot, and whether that kind of affects personality and malevolent creativity.
Yeah, great. So with that kind of, because I'm so interested, I'm not really an academic so much. So my degree is all in communications and media and culture. But how do you kind of drill down to that? Is there a particular game that you focus on, or is there a particular group of people that you really focus on and how they interact, or is it more like a general, this is how people interact with gaming as a whole?
Yeah, so it was quite challenging to kind of decide in the first place how I was going to look at that, because at first I was thinking of like violent games as a binary sort of concept, so violent games or non-violent games, whether obviously it's a lot more complex than that. You've got people that play both violent games and non-violent games. You've got people that play sort of what's traditionally a violent game, but in fact they might not be engaging in that violent gameplay. For example, I was talking to sort of a peer of mine who played Grand Theft Auto a lot as a kid, but they weren't actually playing sort of the violent concepts. You know, they were just kind of driving around. Even though they're playing a violent game, they're not necessarily getting involved in that violent behaviour. So what I found, I came across this measure by Worth and Book, who are some researchers based in Canada, I believe. So they've come up with this instrument which kind of just asks the general population questions about their behaviour in video games sort of across all different genres. So you've got questions like, in the video games you play, how often do you create or design something? How often do you cause injury or harm to other players? How often do you try and progress through the storyline as quick as you can? So that's kind of trying to capture sort of the different video game behaviours across a wide variety of games in the entire population.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really interesting to think about, you know, the behaviour that can kind of exist in players across different kinds of games, rather than just the, you know, like you said, the binary of non-violent versus violent games, but maybe, yeah, looking more in a nuanced way at that behaviour itself. Caitlin, I imagine you're halfway through, probably at the halfway mark in your honours year at the moment. Are you expecting any particular findings, or have there been anything that's kind of surprised you so far, or things that you've that have kind of matched your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, something that has come up that I wasn't quite expecting, I found it so difficult to find people that don't play games, because I did want to kind of compare people who don't play games at all to people who do play games. So I've got my survey. I've had almost 500 people do the survey and only 10 don't play games. So that did surprise me. I thought it would be maybe not quite 50-50, but I definitely think start off with I was looking for a lot more of the population that didn't play games. So that's been quite challenging. I kind of had to not change what I'm looking at, but I definitely can't look at it in comparison of non-gamers and gamers, just because I can't find many people that don't play games. So yeah, that's been an interesting and challenging find that I've had pop up.
That's really interesting, because Lee and I were talking before, and Lee, obviously, as she said, is a big gamer, and I'm not at all. Like, I don't really play games, so I'll have to see if I can
maybe Hen, you can fill out the survey.
yeah boost those numbers for that demographic.
That'd be great.
I'm not opposed to games at all. Like, I just don't find myself doing it very often. Yeah. So is there anything that you think has also been kind of the most interesting or part of this, something that stood out for you?
I suppose just looking at the different types of gameplay that people do kind of engage in, and how that potentially might relate to creativity and personality. Obviously, like, I'm still collecting my data at the moment, so I haven't got any particular findings. but I am really keen to see sort of whether there is that connection between, first of all, personality and the types of game play that different personality traits engage in, as well as whether the gameplay does kind of have an effect on the creative outcome. So whether people that are playing the more sort of creative games, where in the games they're creating and designing different things, whether they sort of tend to be more creative than the people who aren't.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, and I know that, yeah, you're still collecting your data and still coming to kind of conclusions and things, and you might have more of these things to reflect on as you kind of get to the end or post writing your thesis. But are there any things that you think you've particularly enjoyed or found challenging about the process?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's been a particularly difficult year with everything transitioning online. So that's kind of been difficult to navigate, as well as the typical honours year, which is quite hard to begin with. I think just that feeling, I know a lot of people that I'm going through honours with at the moment are the same. They're kind of not really sure what to expect next, or they're not really clear where they're heading. So I think it's kind of that ability to adapt to whatever's coming next, whether that's within the honours year or with everything COVID-19, what's happening with that. Like, we don't know if we're going to be back at uni next semester, like physically, or whether it's going to remain online. So I think it's kind of that challenging, like what's happening next, and just being able to adapt to whatever comes our way.
Definitely. I'm also waiting to find out whether I'm a student as well, so we'll see. We've just had a question through from the audience as well, Caitlin. Okay, it's partly a statement. Okay, so the audience member has said, Criminal is a great true crime podcast that I enjoy. I'm curious what podcasts Caitlin listens to, and do you have any recommendations?
I love Australian true crime. That's something I'm really interested in. But in terms of podcasts, I really like Case File. That kind of just gives you the facts. Great storytelling. Crime Junkie's good too. That's another one that I really like listening to. So they're probably the two that I recommend the most.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not a massive podcast person. Like, I listen to audiobooks and things. So, but I think if I was going to get to it, would be that true crime one, because you could kind of sit there and be like, oh, what's this? And a lot of crimes have been solved through these podcasts and things like that. Is there a way that you particularly link, like, your interest in true crime and the games that you've chosen during your study? Like, is there any kind of overlap there?
I don't think there's necessarily an overlap. I think people do have that opportunity kind of in games where they can sort of engage in that malevolent or criminal behaviour that they obviously in most cases wouldn't do in real life. So I think it's really interesting, to consider games where you do have that opportunity, because there's no consequences if you do engage in criminal behaviour. But personally, I haven't really looked into that, and for my study, I hasn't really looked into specific games.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. So what would you say to other people who might be thinking about studying psychology?
Definitely, it's a great degree to do. There's so many options you can take it, and so many different kind of fields. Throughout sort of the first 3 years of undergrad, like every week, basically, I was presented with like a different field that I haven't really thought of before. Video game behaviour, for example, wasn't something I'd really tied in closely with psychology before. So I think it's definitely fantastic, and just learn as much as you can and be open to whatever opportunities you can, just to kind of learn about all the different fields and what particularly kind of sparks your interest, and take it from there.
Yeah, it's great that we get to talk to you, and people who are like, oh, psychology, it's all sitting on a couch and having someone tell you their problems, but it's so the scope is so much wider than that. You could be talking about video gaming, malevolent behavior in video games. So yeah, it's great to see that there's much more opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got friends kind of doing all different range of topics. I mean, some of my friends have looked at more environmental psychology, so looking at like conservation and fast fashion and things like that. So any kind of relevant topic you can definitely look into.
That's so fascinating to hear there's such a broad range of topics being looked at through a psychology lens. That's really great. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, and it might be hard to answer, but what, based on what you know, what are things looking like for you in the next few months? Do you think, I suppose, how have your research methods and your methodologies kind of been impacted, like gathering research or gathering data?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm one of the lucky ones in terms of the honours cohort this year, because I'd always kind of planned to collect data online. I was always doing a questionnaire and a survey that I was distributing mostly through social media and like gaming forums and things like that. So for me personally, I was probably kind of benefited by the move online. More people are spending time online. So when I am distributing my survey, more people are accessing that. I know a lot of the cohort have had difficulty kind of having to change their projects and scrambling last minute. So I definitely think I was kind of in a good situation where I didn't have to change too much of what I was looking at. It's more so just sort of supervisory meetings and coursework that's gone online for me.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually, about how maybe there's a silver lining around people maybe using the internet more than they would normally, or being more available to take part in things like your survey or your research data collecting online, even though it might be easier for some to do it in person or in interviews or whatever. So I guess following from that, what's coming next for you? Do you have any post-honours plans, any further study or research you're looking at, or taking a break, or what's coming next?
I mean, I suppose with my honours research, whatever I do find from this, I'd love to get published and just to share with as many people as I can. Next steps, I think I'm looking at sort of doing a PhD program. I'd love to pursue a career. In academia and kind of look more into potentially video games and human behaviour and creativity as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic that sparked a longer term interest in this research. That's really, really great. We have another question from the audience. Is there a game that has helped you through isolation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of many who's hopped on the Animal Crossing train. I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, and I think it came out just sort of at the time we did have to start kind of isolating. So I've been playing that quite a bit. It's been quite fun.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people have been playing that for sure.
So you mentioned before we went on air as well that you have some great book recommendations. So while we're still kind of coming out of lockdown and maybe have played enough Animal Crossing for now, could you talk us through some of your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's sort of wanting to find out more about creativity and malevolent creativity in particular, my supervisor, Professor David Cropley, he has written a couple of books. So we've got Creativity and Crime, a psychological analysis, as well as The Dark Side of Creativity. So they both kind of look at that creativity and crime, looks into things like terrorism as well, and how creativity kind of is tied into that. Specifically with video games, there's another book published, Video Games and Creativity, and Professor David Cropley's also written a chapter in there specifically about video games and malevolent creativity. So that's a really interesting read if anyone kind of wants to find out more information.
Yeah, cool. And I think our moderator will chuck it in the chat as well, so if people want to look them up. Now, on the other side of malevolence, do you think gaming can bring out the good in people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly a lot of evidence kind of in the research that gaming can bring out the good in people. I think particularly from a social aspect, there are a lot of collaborative games where you kind of are helping one another. In my particular study, one of the sort of gaming behaviours I'm looking at is helping behaviour. And I know in terms of just kind of being social, and particularly like during isolation, like there's that whole social aspect that gaming has kind of enabled a lot of people to engage in, whether that's within the game or communities around the game. I know there's a lot of internet forums and Facebook groups for people just to kind of discuss and share ideas about games they're playing. So there's definitely a big social aspect, which I think is excellent.
Yeah, definitely. We have part of our Life Interrupted exhibition is an exhibit called Games in Time of Corona. So, and like after this chat, we'll have some of our moderators play that game as well. So, and we have things like Minecraft that we've dubbed Modcraft, and we've actually had members of the public like seek us out and like, I want to play these games with you guys. Like, what are you doing while Mod's closed? So yeah, it's really helped Mod kind of reach out and find an audience while there is nowhere to go, really, you know, no kind of scientific creative, you know, gallery outlets. So people have kind of moved online to create their own little worlds as well. And do you have a favorite social game besides Animal Crossing, because that one's really popular, but anything else?
Or collaborative game?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I have been playing a lot of Unravel 2 on Nintendo Switch, which is working with a partner to kind of, it's like a puzzle game. Overcooked is fun. That's another one that I've been playing on Switch. As well as just your classic sort of Mario Party, Mario Kart. We've been playing a lot of that as a household. I mean, there's only so many times I think we can play Uno on a Friday night. So we've kind of taken that over to video gaming.
Nice one.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
I was just going to say, while playing these games, so during your research, do you recognize any of your behaviors while you're gaming that you're exploring in your research as well? Does it kind of make you take stock and be like, oh, actually, I'm quite malevolent and creative while I'm playing these games?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a lot more kind of looking at, oh, so where do I kind of fit on the creativity side of things, or where do I fit on the sort of the violent or aggressive side of things? Yeah, so I think I kind of sit quite evenly across all of the kind of aspects I'm looking at. I guess I do play kind of a wide variety of games, so there's not like I'm particularly aggressive or I'm particularly creative. I think I'm just kind of floating in the middle.
Yeah, I definitely get that Mario Kart rage though. So, yeah. So even I guess those games that are like, oh, it's innocent, you know, but you know, here I am smashing people out with Mario Kart or making Pokemon fight one another for my benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
So do you look at as well the creativity within the game? So things that look really innocent like Mario Kart or Pokemon, do you look at those as being violent games as well, like have that malevolent component as well, or is it just those specific like GTA or first person shooters?
Yeah, I think any game really can have that malevolent component. I mean, if you look at a game like Mario Kart, you do kind of have to be a little bit strategic to kind of get in front, even though it's like on paper it's like a really harmless fun game. Like, you know, you might have to throw your friend under the bus kind of thing to win. So yeah, definitely.
So Caitlin, if people are in the chat while watching this today are interested in finding out more about your research in particular, or about this topic in general, where do you recommend they would go aside from those books you suggested before?
Yeah, so I'm still collecting data for my research. So if anyone does want to take part in that, it's a sort of a 10-minute questionnaire on SurveyMonkey. Anyone over 18 can participate. So whether you play games or not, that's open if people want to participate. I've also got my Twitter account, which is @CaitlinWaldie. I'm hoping to kind of post any interesting results I find on there if people are keen to find out more as well.
Awesome, and we'll have those links should be in the Twitch chat for the audience to, take down and hopefully, contribute to your research, because it'd be great if we can have, some more people adding to your bank of participants. So thanks so much, Caitlin. It's been really great to have you on the program this afternoon. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, it's been a great chat.
Thank you.